Digital photography made simple.
Hi, welcome back to Digital 1-to-1. On today's segment, we're going to be talking about what is a telephoto lens and how to use it more creatively. Now, it might seem obvious to you why we should use a telephoto lens, but let's examine this idea a little closer. We know it's great by getting a closer view of our subject when physically we can't get closer ourselves. It allows us some distance to safely capture our image. Like when we're at the zoo, we're not going to go over a fence to try to capture a picture of a polar bear, or when we're at the park trying to take a shot of our kids playing football. All lenses have focal length and angle of view, but the telephoto lens has the longest focal length, creating the narrowest angle of view in our subject. Here's a graph showing you the differences between a wide-angle lens, a normal lens, and our telephoto lens. A telephoto lens lets us move closer to the scene, allowing the closest subject to us to increase in size than the objects in the distance. By understanding this concept, we can use the telephoto lens more creatively.
A long focal length needs stability. And like the lens we saw Santino holding earlier, that telephoto lens, we need to understand how to keep our lenses stable and to get a better shot and a clearer image. So I'm going to use this small monopod as an example to show the differences between the wide-angle, normal, and telephoto. Right now, let's say we're at a wide-angle view. Now we're at what might be a normal view. But when I extend my telephoto, all of a sudden, I'm a little shaky on the edge. And this is what we mean about keeping our lens stable when we're using a telephoto. So if this length is representing our telephoto lens, and we want to obtain more stability, we will have to use a tripod to get a clearer shot. And a lot of those telephoto lenses have tripod mounts actually built right on the lens. But as we bring our lenses down to a normal view or a wide-angle view, we see how now all of a sudden we have a lot more stability. I can hold this a little tighter. Now remember, this is just for demonstration purposes. But when we're using a point-and-shoot camera like this one, we're not using monopods like this to actually shoot our shots. We're using our arm. And when we use our arm and we're looking at the viewfinder, pretend our arm is like that monopod. A lot of us tend to hold our cameras out here, or if we need glasses, we're holding them out even further. So let's remember, when we zoom in with these kind of cameras, we are still holding ourselves to that idea of stability, and a little better to understand that we might need to hold our cameras a little more steady with a small monopod, or even bring them in closer to your body and use your viewfinder when you're using your telephoto part of your zoom on these small cameras. Using this camera as a sample, we're going to take two shots. One where I'm hand holding it at my optical telephoto, and the other one we're going to do the same thing but on a tripod. Let's take a look at the differences.
Now this also happens with SLRs, but most SLRs do have viewfinders, and making sure when you have a long lens like this that you hold up to the viewfinder piece and make sure you hold it steady. That's going to give you the most stability. Now we have another issue here, which is the weight of the lens. The longer the telephoto lens, the more weight we're going to get. Now if you want to make sure that your images are sharp as possible, you got to use a tripod or a monopod when you have long telephoto lens. Take a look at some of those sports photographers out in the field when they're photographing. They always have a monopod or a tripod. They know that they have to keep the weight as stable as possible, and that's going to give you the best, sharpest image. We have image stabilization in most cameras. Now that helps, but why take that risk? When we spend lots of money taking a vacation, we want to make sure we get the sharpest looking images. And that has to do with to make sure that your camera is steady. And we don't want to come home to soft images due to lack of stabilization. We have a video called Keeping Your Camera Steady. It will give you some great tips on how to stabilize your camera and getting those great images.
With today's point-and-shoot cameras, we now have a way where we can actually go deeper into the telephoto's focal length. Now we call this the digital zoom. What this means is that all telephotos have an optical focal limit. And what that actually is the glass itself in the lens determines the focal length within our telephoto. However, a digital zoom does not operate in the same manner. This feature is an additional step that allows the camera to move into the optical focal length's limit. Think of it as a way we might crop an image after we took the shot. Manufacturers have been continually selling us on digital zoom capabilities, sometimes with maximum lengths of up to 24 times zoom capabilities. But don't be fooled, because the optimal focal limit is the best part and quality of your lens. The rest is just your camera zooming in to the zoom. There is one more thing to consider when using our telephoto with the digital zoom feature. And since we're actually going further beyond the optimal focal limit, we're going to get something called noise, or what appears to look like grain. Now we're going to use this camera and show you on the back of the screen as we move past the actual focal limit into the digital zoom, how the picture starts to break up and where the noise shows up in our shots.
So let's recap the important aspects of using a telephoto lens. First, understanding the focal length and the angle of view. 2, the best way to stabilize your camera. And 3, becoming aware as we use more of our digital zoom, we run the risk of getting more noise in our image. Understanding how to utilize this knowledge helps us to be a smarter photographer, and in turn helps us to be a digital one-to-one photographer.
But we'd like for you to consider one more thing. A lot of the cheaper cameras out there don't have cameras with viewfinders, and they only have the screen. Here on Digital One-to-One, we always recommend that you have a camera with a viewfinder, because stability in your shots is important, and a viewfinder allows you to have that stability. So the next time you're out shopping for a new camera, talk to your local photo retailer about a camera with a viewfinder.
So for the best tips on digital photography, look to us here on Digital One-to-One.